This is the Roy's Boys Podcast with your host, Joshua Marlowe. Hey guys, welcome to another edition of the Roy's Boys Podcast, powered by Carolina Electrical Services. For all your electrical needs, call Jacob Marlowe at 704-320-7357, and he'll take care of this for you guys. Josh and Anthony here with you as always, and today we're going to recap what was the 2018-19 Carolina basketball season. Of course, we all know it didn't end with the Final Four appearance or a national championship, but a 29-7 record and a 16-2 mark in ACC play left us a lot of memories that we're going to go back and just talk about as a whole. Anthony, how's it going today?
Pretty good, man. Kind of come to terms with the fact that we were out of the tournament. I mean, now the season's over. Now that I am struggling to come to terms with, but, still a little, I was saying it the other night, a little bit excited to look towards next season and see where this team's going to go and how they're going to compete next year.
Yeah, and we'll definitely do that as the summer goes along. But, today we're going to focus on this past season. And so first off, we'll get to the opening tip, which is a interview I had with Adam Lucas yesterday. And I'm going to let you guys listen to that right now. Adam, how's it going today, man?
Doing good, Joshua. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. Really love what you brought the last time you were on the podcast. We wanted to get you back on here. We'll go ahead and jump right into it. The season didn't end the way, of course, we wanted to with winning a national championship, but they still won 29 games, set the ACC regular season mark for wins with 16. Can you just kind of put the season into words with what the team accomplished, even though they had a quick exit in March?
Yeah, I think you hit on the highlights there, and of course a couple of wins over Duke, some big wins throughout the year, really. So I think if you had written down what this team achieved and put it in an envelope back in maybe October, I think you probably would have been pretty happy with what the Tar Heels achieved. I think if you look at what's on paper, they might have overachieved just a little tiny bit. I know nobody's happy going out in the Sweet 16, but a lot of teams would be pleased with that. So I think all things considered and the ceiling and everything else, I'd say fairly good season. Not great because it ended short of the Final Four, as everybody knows. But winning the ACC regular season, a share of the ACC regular season title with this team, I think was pretty impressive.
I want to discuss the coaching job Roy Williams did this year. Like you said, if you would have thought after the non-conference schedule this team was 10-3, 16-2 in the ACC didn't seem reasonable. Was this probably his best coaching job, maybe outside of the 05-06 season he's had while he's been at Carolina?
Yeah, I think the people who are closest to him will tell you that prior to this year, his best two coaching jobs at Carolina were the 03-04 season and 05-06. For different reasons, of course. 03-04, brand new team, brand new coach, everything was new. 05-06, you had to replace a ton off of that 05 team. I think this group goes right up there with those just because of not only the job Coach Williams did, but also the competition they were playing against and that they succeeded against. I think if you wrote down some of the other rosters that the Tar Heels had to go against, you would say, well, that team's probably better than Carolina this year. But Coach Williams, as he usually does, I think a lot of people were somewhat disappointed with in November and December and turned it into a group that by March, I really do think was playing about as well as anybody in the country.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. We graduate 3 seniors this year, and these guys meant a lot to the program, including Cam Johnson, who was only here for 2 years. I know it's not easy, but can you just try to put into words what they meant to the program on the floor and then, of course, how they represented the university off the floor?
I don't think we'll ever see a senior class like this again on the court, just because of the expectations they came in with, which were minimal, especially for Kenny Williams and Luke May, and the results that they produced, which were incredibly good, and right up there with any 4-year class that's been through the Carolina basketball program. And because of the era we're in and just the way things work today with college basketball and the NBA, I just don't think you're going to see a class come in and succeed like this again. You threw in Cam Johnson, who improved a ton from his junior season to his senior season, or, well, I guess from his first year at Carolina to his second year at Carolina. And you've got 3 guys who just got so much better on the court. And if it's possible off the court, they were even better. Every everybody knows about Luke May and all the things that he's done away from the basketball court. But Cam Johnson and Kenny Williams are right there with him in terms of trying to make an impact in the community, representing Carolina basketball the way you'd want it represented. So it's a group that is going to be very hard to say goodbye to, and we're going to probably not see the likes of it again.
Moving on, Nazir and Kobe both announced they're going to the NBA, which weren't shocking announcements. Where their place as freshmen to Roy Williams, because they are one-and-dones, and Kobe was kind of the rare freshman that kind of etched his place in the Carolina lore. Just kind of speak on that for a minute.
Well, I think Kobe's the easier one because he had such a huge impact this year. I think you put him right with Brandon Wright in terms of the very best players who played one season at Carolina. And, man, you would have liked to have seen him for another one. But we're not going to get to it, of course. I think Kobe White maybe a slight edge just because he had to play the point guard position, which is so difficult, but he did it so well. And I think with even just one more season, I think we'd be talking about him as maybe one of the best point guards to ever play that position under Roy Williams, maybe even at North Carolina. As it is, with just the one season, I think you say, well, he had a great freshman year, and it's hard to go much further than that. Nasir, that's a tough one. The player we saw in those first two games of the NCAA tournament is what everybody was hoping for from Nasir Little throughout the year. A little bit inconsistent, but I think that also had to do with some injuries. Really unfortunate injury in the Virginia game, which both hampered the Tar Heels in that Virginia game, and then they hampered Little for a couple weeks after that. And then for him to get sick the week of the game against Auburn, of course, everybody's always going to wonder what might have been with a healthy Carolina team that week. I don't think Nasir Little goes on the same shelf with Brandon Wright and Kobe White as far as hugely important one-year players, but certainly had a big impact. And don't forget, he made academic All-ACC in one semester, which is pretty hard to do.
Right. So we've mentioned we've they're graduating 3 seniors, and you lose 2 quality freshmen. That leaves the roster in a big a question as maybe ever under Roy Williams. And we've known that they've checked in with multiple graduate transfers. Is this going to be the new normal with it seem like Carolina's moving to getting one and done players back on campus, and the roster the way it's shaped right now?
I don't know that I'd call it the new normal. I think maybe this is sort of one extreme edge. Carolina's been on the other extreme edge in a couple recent years where they knew they had everybody coming back, and they knew as soon as the college basketball season was over, they knew exactly what they'd have next year. That's probably not normal either. So I think they're somewhere right in the middle this year, but maybe a little more towards the unusualness of not knowing what's going to happen. I think by May 1st, we'll have a much better idea of who's going to be on that roster for 2019-20. But as it is constituted right now, there are definitely some question marks on that team.
This is going to be a really big summer for a lot of guys going into next year. If there's one guy that you would pinpoint that said he has to improve his game individually and then to help the team collectively, who would that one guy be?
Yeah, that's a tough question because of what we just talked about and not knowing for sure exactly what roles each individual is going to play on next year's team. And so for that reason, I would probably cheat a little and maybe go with somebody who can play a lot of different positions on next year's team, and that would be Leaky Black. I think before he had that ankle injury down at Georgia Tech, we were starting to see the player he could be who can do a whole lot of things. He can play 3 different positions, maybe 4 different positions. Might have been even one time this year he played 5 different positions. Carolina's not going to need him to play all 5 next year, I hope. But certainly he could play 2 or 3 different spots for you. Carolina may need him to play quite a bit of point guard. We don't know for sure. They're going to probably need him to be able to put the ball in the basket in a variety of different ways. So I think, and the old thing that Dean Smith always said, that you see the most improvement between the freshman year and the sophomore year. If that's the case, then Leaky Black should be in for a really big summer and hopefully a really big sophomore season.
One last thing, and I'll let you go, and this is kind of, we're going to have a little fun here. Last week, Kevin Durant mentioned on a podcast that when he was being recruited, he wanted to play at Carolina, but mentioned playing time with that loaded 07-08 team as the reason why he chose to go to Texas, where he'd be on the floor a lot more. Could you just envision him on that 07-08 team that ran through everybody until they got to Kansas in that Final Four game?
I think that certainly was nice of Kevin Durant to say. I think there might have been another issue or two there that maybe he forgot to mention. But for whatever reason, if he had ended up on that team, then I would happily have replayed that Final Four game against Kansas. And I will tell you, Joshua, with 100% certainty, it would not have been 40-12 in that game there in San Antonio. That game would have had a much different outcome.
Yeah, that definitely was a fun topic to discuss. Adam, I want to thank you for joining me today. We appreciate all you write for us and all your contributions on the Carolina Insider, and I'm just glad you gave me a few minutes of your time.
I appreciate it. Anytime.
All right, guys, there you go. That was Adam Lucas of GoHeels.com, and you can catch him on the Carolina Insider podcast, which will release a new episode Friday as they get us ready for the spring game. I want to thank you guys for joining me. Go Tar Heels. All right, so that was Adam Lucas of GoHeels.com. Really gave us some good insight yesterday. He really gave me a unique answer when I asked him about the one guy that needs to step up in the offseason, and I kind of forgot about Leaky when I asked the question. And Leaky's a guy that I'm a really big fan of, love his game, but I was kind of leaning more towards Brandon Robinson is what I expected to get, because his role is going to really increase next year, or maybe even Garrison Brooks taking a bigger step offensively, because he's going to have to be able to give us some more points consistently inside. But Leaky is a guy that is also going to have a bigger role next year with you're losing your ball handler, and if you don't get a point guard in this recruiting class, you're really going to be short of that position. So, and he'll be a guy when we get to the player part of the summer where we recap their year and preview their summer. We'll talk heavily about, but just a unique answer. Shouldn't be surprised because Adam Lucas should start the Leaky train with the Carolina Insider podcast. Has a man crush on him, and but was kind of taken aback by that. So we'll go ahead and let's just talk about the 2018 and 19 season.
Can I make a comment on the Leaky Black? I actually like the pick a lot, and I'll tell you why. Is because you got to think that if for some reason we don't land Precious Achua, I think is how you pronounce his name, then Leaky's pretty much our guy if we don't land someone on the transfer market. Now, Rajon Tucker fits that position very well, and that might be the guy that Carolina goes after. Also, I think his name, what is it, Daniel Utiami or something. I don't remember exactly how you pronounce it, but he's also one of the guys that the Tar Heels are potentially looking at to add there. But Leaky could be a significant player whether or not he starts or comes off the bench, because like you mentioned, point guard also could be an area that's a little bit up in the air, meaning that, they could have to move some guys around. So he could end up playing that Theo Pinson-like role that we saw him playing when we first saw him out there, and we talked about on this podcast. He might have to play that role a little earlier than we may have once expected. So I actually do like the pick a lot by Adam, and I think it's a good one. By the way, our train, or what on this one, can we start the Caleb Ellis train? Let's make that our guy. His dunk in warm-ups is fantastic. This man needs some love.
Yeah, he's definitely probably our favorite. We normally have a walk-on every year. We
have our bench guy. Aaron Rallman was our guy for a few years, and Stillman White also.
And now Caleb Ellis has kind of gotten that role. Him and KJ.
I love KJ.
From the Blue Squad are probably my two guys. But let's just talk about 2018-19.
Mm-hmm.
Difficult way to end the year, but if you'd have told me after December, heading into the new year, when we were 10-3 in the non-conference season, looked really bad in the 3 losses, most notably at Michigan and then against Kentucky in the CBS Sports Classic, that this team would go 16-2 in the regular season of the ACC play, win at Cameron Indoor Stadium when they were ranked number 1 in the country, beat Duke on your home floor on your senior night to sweep Duke, and tie for first overall with Virginia. I don't know what I would have said. I'm as optimistic as a Tar Heel fan as there was. I did not see what the ACC season became.
Oh, I tell you what I said
in early January.
I'll tell you exactly what I would have said. You are. I mean, what type of reefer are you smoking in the back? Like, There is no way that I would have saw that. Especially the game to me that rattled me, and I think a lot of Tar Heel fans the most at that time, was the Michigan game, because there just didn't seem to be any fight in the team. They pretty much Michigan just looked like that much of a better team. And as the season went along, we saw Michigan sort of peaked early and, sort of faded out towards the end of the season, did the same thing in the NCAA tournament. And our trajectory was a lot different, where we got better as the year went along. And then, we did end up exiting in the same round, but it was totally different paths. But at that time, you're right. I would have told you were nuts, because we just weren't that efficient on the defensive end. I mean, remember the game against Gonzaga, we played really well offensively. We did not play well defensively. So there were still those concerns defensively of, hey, we're not really seeing what we need to be seeing. Our guys are really struggling to off of ball screens. It just really hasn't been what we would expect from a Carolina team. And once they got into conference play, it seemed like things turned around early, and then we hit the game that I think weirdly ended up turning the season, but at the time we thought might have destroyed the season.
Yeah, it was. We talked about the Gonzaga game, and that was as good as we probably saw this team play offensively all year long. But we really never saw that again. Even when the game at Duke,
right.
We never saw the full package offensively, and we really, in the tournament, we really had our moments in all three games where we struggled to score the ball like we wanted to. But the biggest was the growth defensively. I have never seen a team grow from as bad as they were. You remember when we opened ACC play at Pittsburgh, again, that we blew them out, we were still playing zone because we couldn't contain the dribble. Like if Pittsburgh would have made shots, that game could have been a lot different than it was, right, because the defense was still that bad.
Well, they went to zone to take away the drive, because early in the game, that was literally what Pittsburgh was doing. They were just putting the ball on the floor and driving right past us, and that was the problem early in the year. And it remained a problem until the Louisville game. And that was when things seemed to change. Once we got blown out in that game, I think that was the wake-up call that, hey, we are talented offensively, but if we don't play well defensively, we're not going to win games. It's just not going to happen. Not in this ACC, really not in this year's college basketball, because, we talked about it on, off the podcast because it's, more general college basketball, but the bubble was really weak this year for a reason. It's because everybody was just beating everybody in college basketball. This is the most chaotic season of college basketball in the regular season that I can think of. And of course, it makes sense then that the tournament would turn out to be chalk, but I just, at that time, I think that was kind of where everybody was like, okay, after that Louisville game, what can we do? Because right now, this team, we thought at that time, this team is probably going to be somewhere around in a 7 or an 8 seed. I mean, we didn't know where they would end up.
Yeah, the Louisville game, when we spent a lot of time talking about, of course, the aftermath after that 21-point home defeat, which is the largest under Roy Williams in the Smith Center since he came back to Carolina. And we talked about a lot during the year how it was the turning point of the season. And, we spent a lot of time on, we normally have that game, but it's normally on the road. I think the fact that it happened at home was what I think what really helped the team the most was you got embarrassed on your home floor. You had a fan base that was almost embarrassed by your performance, by the way you played, the lack of effort you gave on both ends of the floor. You didn't defend, you didn't rebound, and it was just a really pathetic effort. And then we never saw that effort again. We saw a team from that game, from that day forward, buy in more defensively. And we knew, as much as we stress rebounding in the program, this team knew if they didn't rebound, they wouldn't win. I mean, look at what happened at Auburn. You out-rebound one of the worst teams in the country only by 4.
Right.
If you rebound the way you're supposed to rebound, maybe you win that game and you play for a chance to go to the Final Four. And I thought that was the game. They got beat up on the boards. I think it was out-rebounded by 9. And there was, I think, only 2 times this year they got out-rebounded. And I think, oddly enough, they won one game and lost the other. And I think that was the Duke game that they lost in the ACC tournament. But that was the turning point of the season, was getting blown out at home against Louisville. And then I think the game that gave this team the confidence they needed to make what we were hoping a deeper run in March was you went to Cameron Indoor, and even though it was a top 8 matchup, it's Duke Carolina. We were given no chance. From the national pundits, from everyone that was covering the game, we have no chance to win the ball game. And we thought going in, and we spent a lot of time with guests and you and I talking, if we don't shoot the 3, there's no chance we're going to win. We go in there, shoot 10% from 3.
2 of 20, baby.
And we beat Duke by 16, and the game wasn't even that close. And you can, at the time it was, Zion hurt his... No. We went in there and we worked Duke, and that gave this team the confidence to run the back end of the schedule, which was the toughest in the country. They only lost one after that game, which was the Virginia home game. So,
right,
just really, it was an ACC season that was 16-2 that it didn't feel as dominant. This team wasn't as good as 16-2, but the coaching job that Roy Williams did and this staff, what you did with Kobe White from the beginning of the year, where he was turning the ball over 4 or 5 time game a night, right, to lowering that, and just what Luke May continued to do, even though averaging a double-double was seen by this fan base as a disappointment, was just really, the coaching was as good as we've seen in ACC play from Roy Williams with a team that wasn't supposed to win the ACC.
I don't really care how impressive people think it is. I mean, you go 16-2. Well, you weren't beating teams, by 10 or more points. Okay, I mean, this is the problem. Everybody that I always see on social media, whenever they talk about Tar Heel teams, they always want to compare them to the 09 team. You can't compare teams to the 09 team. That team was special for a reason. I don't think there will ever be another team as good as that at Carolina. Maybe, but it's going to be hard just because of how the landscape of college basketball is now. The talent is more spread out. I mean, we've seen it. There's a guy, Anthony Edwards, one of the top players in the 2019 class, is going to Georgia. Back in 2009, guys were not going to random schools. If you were good, if you were amongst the top players in the country, you were with the blue blood squads. It was really that simple. Now I feel like it's a different ball game where guys are looking to be the man wherever they're at. So it's a little bit of a different landscape. So for this year's team to be as dominant as they were at 16-2 in conference is phenomenal. People will say, well, they shared the regular season title with Virginia. What shame is there in that? Virginia is one of the best basketball teams in the country if we take a look at the last 5 years. It's really that simple. I mean, Tony Bennett's a guy that's done just a fantastic job. Now they got a national championship to go with it. I'm not taking any shame in that. And I agree with you. I think this is a phenomenal coaching job by Roy, because early in the season, when we were reading the preseason magazines, okay, there was, we were probably in that 12 to 15 range, depending on which magazine you were reading. Was anyone really giving us a chance to win the national championship that you saw? I didn't see it.
No. They finished where they should have, but not with, like a Sweet 16 appearance for most programs, great year. And if this team wouldn't have won the ACC and wouldn't have swept Duke and wouldn't have beaten Gonzaga and just got there maybe on a mini run, then it would have seen as a pretty good year. I think the problem is you were a 1 seed. Mm-hmm. You did go 16-2 in the ACC. You did sweep Duke in the regular season. You beat Gonzaga. You had the second most quad 1 wins. And you get blown out by an SEC team in the round of 16 back-to-back years, and an SEC team has blown you out.
There you go.
And that's why it was seen as a negative season, where, like, in reality, 29-7 is a really, really good year when you look at what the team lost entering the year. Joel Berry and Theo Pinson, 2 of the most important players in the history of this program, leadership-wise and what they did on the floor. You had a freshman point guard. Your best freshman talent never lived up to his billing outside of the first weekend in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And you still managed to win 29 games. And look at your starting lineup: a freshman point guard, a shooting guard who was committed to VCU, a graduate transfer from Pittsburgh, a preferred walk-on, and a center who was once committed to Mississippi State. Won 29 games in the ACC. Right. And for the most part, this was seen as a down year in Carolina basketball. And it's weird. But, this is probably, and when I spoke to Adam, I think this might have been a better job than even 05-06, because this wasn't even expected. what they did in 05, 06, once Hansborough was really, okay, he's that good.
Right.
And the ACC was good that year, but not as good as it is now and as deep.
Of course not. Oh, yeah.
You know, what was still a great year, but this year, even because, you know, it was just, you had Duke, you had Virginia, all these other teams, and you ran right by.
Well, you had the greatest team in the history of college basketball, apparently, that got beat in the Elite Eight. So, yeah, that alone should qualify you as one of the better teams. It's debatable. Now, I'll say this. I don't think it's a down year for Carolina basketball. I do like the word that you used there a moment ago, though, negative. I think it's a it's seen as a negative because you did lose in the Sweet 16, and expectations are high at Carolina, and rightfully so. I mean, if you've been following this program at all, since Gene Smith took over there, even before that, even Frank McGuire, these are the expectations at Carolina. Is
down
to make
years
runs.
Are when Marcus Page was a freshman and a sophomore, and we're losing 12 games and losing in the round of 32.
Right.
Those are down,
I agree with that.
Those are
I agree
down
with that.
years, and those were down years. Although realistically, those teams accomplished what they talent-wise could accomplish at the time.
I mean, here's my thing.
They weren't that good yet.
Was last year not more of a disappointment because that A&M team really wasn't? I don't think that A&M team was anywhere close to this Auburn team that beat us.
I think the problem to me wasn't that it was you lost to A&M in blowout fashion in Charlotte. It was you were really, really still experienced.
Right.
You had two seniors who've been to back-to-back Final Fours, and Luke May and Cam Johnson and all these other guys. And I think that was the most depressing thing was your two best players. You're still very old, and you got run off the floor. Mm-hmm. And you also lost 11 games. I mean, you had a home loss to Wofford. You had 4 home losses that year. I mean, that was the problem I think with that team. Whereas this year, like if this team wouldn't have won the ACC, the Sweet 16 blowout loss wouldn't be as bad. But you won the ACC regular season. You went toe to toe with Duke in a semifinal in the ACC tournament.
Yep.
That's why when you get in the Auburn loss, it looks as bad, or the season just has the feeling it does now. Whereas, like, if you flip the team with last year, then we don't feel as bad. Whereas, like, I remember, right. And I think the harder part when we lost with Barry and Theo was we got to tell them goodbye like this. It wasn't even really a proper goodbye. We got our ass kicked.
I mean, it's pretty bad when your best players, two of your more well-known personalities also in Carolina basketball history. They don't even. I mean, this year, we saw Kenny on the sideline crying. I don't even think Joel and Theo could cry because they were just like. They were in shock. They're like, how did this happen? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I think that's how we all kind of felt. This year, I think it was different. Here's the other thing about it that's different. Auburn was a really, really good basketball team. Like, let's be really honest here. And we're not going to get into this because we're a Tar Heel basketball podcast, and I don't feel like sitting in here for 4 hours debating on whether or not they should, what constitutes a foul call in that situation. Auburn probably should have been in the national championship game. If we're being really honest with ourselves, they probably should have been there.
I think the thing with the Auburn game, what happened, there was potential for what happened to happen. I think just us as fans never wanted to admit it was going to happen.
Right.
There was a really, really good chance they were going to get hot and not miss. Why? Because they did that against Kansas.
They did that all year. Let's be real. They did that all year.
And like you said, they were a foul call away that, in my opinion, shouldn't have been called in that situation.
Right.
From playing on the final Monday.
Yeah.
They were that close to playing for a national championship. They were arguably the hottest team in the country when we played them at the time.
Exactly.
Okay, and then they backed it up with the win over Kentucky. So, in retrospect, the loss isn't that bad because, like you said, A&M went the next weekend 2 years ago and got blown out by Michigan.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That's where the problem falls in. But, okay, let's just reel back in.
Okay.
Did you have a favorite game from the year? I mean, I know that probably one of the 2 Duke games stands out because those were you beat Duke, and it's kind of hard to not go with when you beat your rival.
See, I hate to say it because the one in Cameron was my favorite, and people will, if they hear this, and let's just say they paused it right there, they're going to immediately think, well, the reason that is his favorite game is because Zion got hurt. No. The reason that's my favorite game is because it's in Cameron, and I just thought Luke May playing as well as he did. This is a guy that, you said it earlier, he averaged a double-double this year, and people still look at it as, well, he really didn't play all that well. Or I mean, this kid cannot win with this fan base, by the way. Like, I'm almost glad that he's graduated, because I'm so sick and tired of having to argue with this fan base that this young man is a very good college basketball player. And, I know that you've probably seen it, and a lot of fans have probably seen it. They're trying to get his jersey up in the rafters. Even though he doesn't officially qualify with the qualifications that we have, he has won so many awards that there are fans that are trying to make a movement to get him up there. I don't think he'll ultimately get up there, and I'm neither here or there on that, because I do like the tradition, but he also is a great player. But to see him perform as well as he did in that game and just dominate them inside. I don't care that they had Javin DeLaurier and Marquise Bolden inside.
That's their problem.
Look, Marquise Bolden's a 5-star. Javin DeLaurier was a 4-star recruit. Are we really going to sit there and shed a tear for him? No. I mean, look at Luke May compared to those guys coming out of high school. Luke May would have been nothing compared to those guys, apparently, coming out of high school, because he was, a 3-star? Was he even a 3-star? I think he was officially a 3-star, but for most of the time in high school, he was a 2-star guy. That was going to be a preferred walk-on. And for him to go in there into the toughest environment in college basketball, although I think Fog Allen's kind of close, but we're not going to get into that, and dominate as he did, I think it was just phenomenal. And that's my favorite game of the season, hands down. It has nothing to do with the fact that Zion didn't play. I mean, I wish he would have played, and Luke still would have dominated like that. That would have been fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, so you'll take the one in Cameron. I'll take the one in the Smith Center for the obvious reason. You win your home floor. You protect home court against Duke. It was senior night, so it was a final chance to see Luke May, Kenny, and Cam Johnson on the home floor.
Roy gets a 9-0 against K in situations to claim a share of the ACC.
Which is just phenomenal when you want to argue about those two guys head-to-head since Roy came back home. We trailed at halftime of that game, which the game against Duke, we never trailed in Cameron. We led from the opening tip on. So you had that factor. Kobe White had the sick move where he waved through like 4 guys for a lay-in that just brought the Smith Center to life. So that was probably my favorite game. I love Duke Carolina. Of course, it's always fun when you beat them there, but it's even a little bit sweeter on your home floor, because in a while we've lost to them a lot on our home floor. And now we've won 3 straight at home, so we've kind of restored dominance on our home floor. Hey, we're not going to lose here to you guys, which has been kind of fun, because when Marcus Page was first there, we couldn't beat him at home, and we couldn't beat him at their place. So we were losing them way too much than I like. So I'll take that one. Was there a favorite moment that stood out to you? A play, a signature happening because I have mine. And mine's the when Kenny Williams hit that little 2-pointer at Clemson, and Kobe White just kind of lost his mind and literally punched him so hard he missed a free throw. And even though we only got Kobe for 1 year, we've never seen a guy as a freshman willingly support the other players when they did something good like this guy. We have like 4 GIFs saved now of him jumping up and down like a little 3-year-old when guys do something good. And I think when I think about this team, I'll remember that a senior making a big play, but that freshman being right there to congratulate him, because Kenny didn't have the kind of year he wanted to have. And it was a big-time moment because it was a really close game. Our head coach was in the locker room sick.
Right.
And that was probably my favorite moment, was Kenny hitting the shot and then seeing Kobe's reaction to the play.
My favorite play of the year was definitely Nazir's dunk on Florida State. Not the putback one, which we talked about that on this podcast, and I was disappointed that you didn't pick the putback dunk as the better of the 2 dunks, because you're a rebounding man. So I was shocked. But the initial one, the first one of the game in the first half, where he just goes in and just yams on him against a team that is historically known to have
great
these big men,
length.
And at that time, remember, they were one of the hottest teams in the country at the moment. And for us to win that game, that was one of the big plays. Of course, senior night always produces great moments with all the guys that were there this year. I think those are the types of moments that stand out the most to me. But yeah, the play of the year was definitely, for me, Nazir's dunk on Florida State.
It was a spectacular, big atmosphere, big game.
Right.
Really woke, and in that game particularly, he was our offense in the first half. And I think the problem was
no, you're right about
we never
that.
got that for a whole stretch of games that would come and go outside of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And but it was what it was. I'm trying to think. Is there anything else we need to talk about in regards to the season? Anything you want to talk about that was the 2018-19 season?
I mean, not really. I mean, of course, we got to shout out Steve Robinson again for coming in that game against Clemson and taking over on the fly like that. I mean, this is the second time that we've seen him have to do it, but this was a little bit of a different situation than that game against Boston College, where that Boston College team really wasn't seen as a team that was. Were they even a tournament team that year? No, they were not a good basketball team. That's what I remember. This Clemson team, remember, this was probably Clemson's season. Yeah, let's be honest here. Now, of course, later on, it turned out that if they had probably beaten State, then maybe they would have gotten in because of how weak the bubble was. But at that time, it was seen as their season. And Steve Robinson had to basically take over and lead this team to victory almost midway through the game and did a fantastic job. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. So that's one of the moments that I will always remember about this season. And, I just, other than that, I don't think there's much. I don't know how many people will honestly say when they get older, let's remember this season. Let's remember the 2018-19 season for Carolina basketball. I don't think it's going to go down as one of those teams that was destined to win a title and just didn't, mainly because it wasn't like the 2012 team. I don't think it was comparable to the 84 team that everybody wants to compare it to. I think those two teams were much better. And then, 84, it was just, they just they couldn't get the job done, unfortunately.
This team will go on the list of teams that overachieved.
Right. So I think that's kind of where they're probably at. It was a good season. It's one that, I know I'll say this on a personal level. I had a ton of fun because this is the first time that we've been able to cover them in depth through a podcast, through the blog for you. So it was awesome because it really is a different perspective when you're covering the team day in and day out. When you're just a fan, it's awesome because you get into the games and everything like that. But when you're writing and talking about these guys pretty much every single day for about
6 months?
About 6 months. I can't believe it's been 6 months. I remember the Wofford game like that was yesterday. Yeah. I remember that. But yeah, no, I mean it was a ton of fun, and I'm ready for the 2019-20 season already. It's going to be exciting. It might not be your typical Carolina team once again where you got a ton of talent and these big time senior leaders, but it's definitely going to be interesting.
Yeah, I know for me, you mentioned the podcast and everything. It was a lot of fun. And something I've also tried to do as a fan, and I still struggle, is just enjoying the moment and being a fan of what we're a fan of, because it's something special. Mm-hmm. And losing sucks.
Oh, of course.
And I take losing as hard as anybody. Now, I've kind of gotten over the not sleeping part. Where I was younger, I didn't sleep after losses. But,
yeah, I don't buy that anymore. Not with you. You sleep with anything. Oh my God.
But covering this team and this program year in or day in, day out was a lot of fun. We're going to continue to do it throughout the summer. I told y'all the blog was going away. I'm probably going to start writing because I missed the grind of writing. So that will be back very soon.
I knew you couldn't leave
it, it was just a lot of fun. I'm with you. I mean, once I got over the sting of the Auburn loss, mm-hmm. The emotional thing, the loss is still there. I'm still pissed about losing to Creighton in 2012, but I'm ready to go.
Oh yeah,
I'm ready to tip the ball back up November 6th against Notre Dame, and let's go play ball, because I think it's going to be a fun year, and we'll be here to cover that season just like we were this past year. So with that was 2018-19, guys. It was a fun year. Didn't end the way we wanted to, but how many times is it going to happen? We've only won the title 6 times since the NCAA tournament came into fruition, so it's not easy to do, but we're going to try again next year. Welcome to Beat the Buzzer. Now we'll move to the Beat the Buzzer segment. And today, that is full all of recruiting. And we have some stuff because now we have some dates and some other recruiting came up this week.
Ooh.
So first off, Cole Anthony will announce April 20th, and that's the point guard from Oak Hill Academy that we're trying to lock down. We're seen as the favorite to get him, but you just never know with kids what they're going to do last minute. Roy has a great relationship with that school and getting their point guards. I know Ty Lawson went there. Nate Britt went there. I can't remember. I can't remember if Kendall Marshall was a product of that school or not. I think he was for some reason. The big man Matthew Hurt will announce the day before him. We're not likely to get him. He's kind of seen as a Duke or Kentucky guy as of right now, but we are still in the hunt to get him. He'll announce April 19th. Precious Achua, he will not announce until sometime late May. But we're kind of seen now as one of the front runners to get them between us, Kansas, and Memphis. It's kind of down to us three. And there is a need for us at small forward. And I can't tell you what Kansas and Memphis needs. One name to look out for if we do not land Cole Anthony is the Virginia Tech decommitment Anthony Harris, who is also a point guard. If we don't land him, that could be an alternate route we go in because we're going to need a point guard in this class one way or another. Whether we get a grad transfer or not, I still think Roy wants to bring in a new guy because 7th is a senior, and your grad transfer would only have 1 year. And unless Leakey is supposed to be a 4-year guy, you just never know of him being a point guard. So I do think one way or another, if we don't land Cole Anthony, that is a name to kind of look out for. And then we did offer a 5-star shooting guard in the 2020 class, Jaden Springer, earlier this week. Right now, he's the Tennessee and NC State are the favorites, but you just threw in the blue blood into the hunt. And it seems a guy that Carolina got in late on but could make a run to get in the 2020 class. So there's your recruiting news for all you recruiting buffs. We did offer a Zaire Williams earlier this week, and among other guys. But that's the main stuff that came out of recruiting this week, and that's your Beat the Buzzer. And that's the edition of this podcast. Anthony, I do want to thank you for joining me, guys. You know where to find the podcast. Roy Boys is on Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. The blog, right now temporarily down, but we'll be back up, and you'll find that on medium.com, Facebook, and Twitter. Anthony, tell us about the spring game before we get out of here really quickly.
Well, it's on this Saturday, April 13th, so if you guys want to swing by, go ahead. There should be a good amount of the guys from the basketball team there. I think they'll show up and support those guys. Well, they've been at a lot of baseball games, so you never really know. Also, you should show up because you never know if Roy's going to be there. Roy shows up to these events out of the blue from time to time. And with Mac Brown being back, this might be the time to show up. But if you love football, really, if you're interested in what this Tar Heel team's going to look like, I would say show up. You're not going to see a lot of what they're going to do. They can't put a whole lot on paper because, let's be really honest, there are a ton of injuries right now on the defensive side of the football, and there's still some things that they're working on the offensive side of the football with a playbook that's not overly difficult. It's just taking some guys a little bit of time to get used to it. So while there won't be a ton of things on display, there's still some great battles that are going on. You will get a look at Jay Bateman's new defensive scheme and what that's going to look like, once that we get some of the guys healthy. And then, of course, you'll also get to see a little bit of Phil Longo's offense, and Mac Brown's going to be there. I mean, in case you guys don't know, Mac Brown's a Hall of Famer, and he's got a national championship trophy, so it's pretty good. And yeah, like I said, it's going to be great. There's going to be there should be some guys from the basketball program out there too. So if we see them out there, who knows? Maybe we sneak up and find a little bit of an interview with one of these guys out there. You never really know what's going to happen when we're out there at the spring game. So I think that's it, though, man. I think that's pretty much the spring game recap for you. What do you? I mean, that's it, right?
Yeah,
closing down the podcast there.
Thank you for taking some time out of your day to come join me.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you guys for listening. Go Tar Heels.